And so we had these 3 weeks, and then like one of my closest friends, who was a guy I really respected and really helped me out, helped me keep my sanity at a couple times when I was deployed. Well, he got back and he was having some mental issues, and he went to the mental health services, and they told him to come back after the break. And the 3 weeks we had before the break was the only reason we had them was to make sure you were good to go on the break, and here they were telling him to come back afterwards, and there were a lot of other false promises that, you know, they say do all this stuff for us and then we'll help you out, but they weren't doing much to help people out. So like my friend tried to take things in his own hand and tried to drink his problems away and ended up doing something stupid and then wasn't able to go on break or see his family at all, and a different friend missed half of his break, and just all this stuff after they demanded so much of these guys, a lot of them with really good intentions, but coaxed into doing all these things, and then just had their back turned on them. And so I knew I had to do something, so I took the 30 days I had when I was back to try and put together some kind of a plan. So my plan was I was going to take all the money that I had earned when I was in Iraq, and I was going to walk to the military pay headquarters, which was in Indiana, which is a lot closer in California. But yeah, so I was going to walk there, and then I was going to say, you know, for the rest of my term, if I can't do this anymore, and if you'd rather put me in jail, then that's where I need to be. And so it got down to like a couple days left, and I waited a while to tell my folks what I was up to, and when I told them, they were kind of freaking out, and so they started looking into what kind of options I had, and they started telling me about this thing called conscientious objection, and they took me to meet with a group in DC who helps people with conscientious objection, and so I went down there and they explained what everything was to me, and I had a real hard struggle for those couple days I had left, trying to figure out what to do, because I felt like I would be kind of working with the system and handing my fate over to them, and in a sense part of it was being afraid of what the people back at the base would do if I went through with this option, because as I went through the whole process, I'd have to be living with these guys day to day, whereas if I went to jail, I could be totally separated and not have to worry about that. But when it came down to it, I realized that whatever other problems I have with the system, that there was still this path in the system where they have some respect for people's beliefs, and there's at least an opportunity where I could talk about what had changed in me, and I could maybe share this with other people, and the worst that could happen is they say no, and then I just go through with my original plan anyhow. So I did that, and I went back, and I filed for all the paperwork, and it was about a year-long process, and you have to meet with a chaplain and a psychologist, and then they assign an officer who does like a big courtroom investigation pretty much, and brings in like all your leaders, and then you can bring in the people that know you, and he just asks them a bunch of questions, and the whole thing is to pretty much your sincerity is on trial. And fortunately, everybody that he brought in and that I brought in vouched for my sincerity, and so I guess a lot of the fears that I had, people were actually pretty supportive. There was one case, I guess earlier on, that turned out to be a pretty cool story, is that my first sergeant, who I didn't know very well, most of the other people I knew pretty well, at first when I told him what I was going to do, he said, you know, you've been deployed, you can do what you want, it's your decision. And then when it came time, because we had a little bit of kind of chill out time where we weren't doing a whole lot, but when it came time to start training again, I told my leaders that I wasn't going to train to kill people anymore. And the day that he kind of found out about that happened to be the anniversary of 9/11, and so he was kind of emotional that day, and he flipped out on me in front of the whole group, and called me a traitor and a terrorist and all kinds of stuff like that. And then so kind of the people who didn't really know me as well started making little side comments to me and stuff, but the people who knew me well were very supportive throughout. But I mean, I tried to understand that this guy has very strong beliefs and he's trying to act on these beliefs, and part of his job is also trying to get young guys who are kind of looking for a lot of ways to get out of work to do work. So he might have thought that I was just trying to find a way to avoid doing duty. So I went up to him after he had calmed down and told him, you know, this is what I really believe, but I'm not trying to get out of work, so here's some things that I'll still do. And so after a couple months, I proved that I was sincere and that I was still willing to work hard. And so, yeah, after a couple months, he became really supportive and actually was trying to do things to help my paperwork move along faster, and would talk with me and joke around with me and stuff. And so that was kind of a cool story, and I guess made me feel a lot better about the whole decision, because I had been so worried about, you know, what kind of reaction I would get. And so yeah, so that year came around, and I guess I went through a lot of growth, and was at the beginning very much in a mindset of bitterness, and you know, had that plan, just throw all the money back at the government and just kind of stick it to it and then move on or whatever. And then I kind of began to realize that you know, if I just threw the money back at it, it would still go to something else, and that I would be focusing on the negative, but then what? And so then my plan began to develop into, well, how can I turn this around, and how can I make this something positive? How can I make, you know, a positive out of a negative? And so I started just looking through different charity guides and trying to research as much as was out there, and came up with a list of 12 charities and tried to focus on the ideas of like individual action, because I mean, I think a lot of people, and it's easy to get frustrated with like a huge system, and I mean, especially for people in the military, it's like there's this huge thing, what good is one person speaking up going to do, or even a country as a whole? You kind of have, you know, the president up there, and it's like, oh, well, the president did this, either good or bad, and like everything falls on his shoulders, but what about people on an everyday level and day-to-day action? So I tried to find these charities that, you know, put that into real life, that what you do on a day-to-day basis can make a real difference. And I also tried to connect it a lot with kind of the religious ideas that I had always, you know, thrown out, and that a lot of people